Hey guys, here I am with the 10th part with Kassra. Really very, very entertaining. We really lose track of time here. I hope you like what we're doing here. It has a nice depth. So first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to sit here for so long and present this, to discuss your biography and other topics. Yes, in the last part, which we then finished, it was really like that. You're still sitting together in the car. The mood is terrible. Turkish is being spoken. Then you go eat together, spend the day in Frankfurt, and then the mood isn't captured anymore. No, it's over.
As I said, it was the birthday of the person in question, Aygun Uçuk, and we were there, but the mood was terrible. So Bülent and Kadir were doing their thing, and I was off to the side making phone calls, eating. And the only one who really encouraged me was Selim back then. He said, "Come on, forget it, never mind, clear your head, let's eat now." And then we left. But that was it. I still didn't feel like it. I mean, I just wasn't in the mood for that kind of thing. After 5 or 6 hours, it was over. We got back in the car and drove back. No one talked to me. They spoke Turkish. All three of them are Turkish. I was still persona non grata, even in my own car, and we drove back.
I would have turned the radio up so loud that I wouldn't have to talk.
I wasn't driving myself. I didn't have a driver's license at that time anymore. And then we drove back, stopped briefly for 5 hours. Then I was supposed to refuel, so I refueled. Yeah, and then when you think about it, you just shake your head. That's how it was. We then drove back, refueled, and continued in Turkish. Then they drove back.
How do you say goodbye when you get out of the car?
Bill was the only one, and he said goodbye, causing Kadir to leave. We stayed in Reiningen afterwards. He parked the car at McDonald's or a similar place. There's a McDonald's there. It always started from the club. There used to be a gas station too, which is gone now. He parked, got out, and walked away. And that's where I start. He couldn't drive it away either. I still remember it well. We drove away together.
I have to admit, I can't help but chuckle about it. Yeah, that's how it is. I think there's more socialization in kindergarten.
Well, kindergarten in that way, yes, but the topics were just kindergarten level. No.
No, but the behavior is... Yes, of course. You have to pull yourself together at some point. Remember, nothing occurred here.
Yes, especially since I just said something. Of course, there would also be people watching. Yeah, that's obvious in a structure like this when you have the boss, the head of the family, and you can't just take down the boss and so on. Yeah, but at the end of the day, we're all adults, and somehow you just have to, you don't really think much of it. It's just good advice. I mean, he's traveled the world and given advice to all kinds of people. Yeah, he's the president, but he didn't care about that here. It wasn't meant in a bad way. I didn't say to him, "Hey, you asshole, how stupid are you? How can you be like that?" or anything like that. It was all very reasonable and normal. But also just the mindset, and also the inability to be so completely bossy and patriarchal, and also completely in a totally different hemisphere mentally. So that's how it happened. We then drove back, got out, and then of course I was the jerk of the club on duty, and I didn't notice it at first, but I know that he then also started making announcements and saying things like, "Oh, hey, that Persian, the little jerk," and so on. And then I showed up at the Sahara a day later, and everyone looked at me like I was trash. From everyone, even those I was closest with. They formed their own groups talking among themselves, leaving me standing alone, completely excluded. And I thought to myself, okay, well, it was a very uncomfortable situation, and I wondered what was going on. Nothing happened, as you said yourself, and we really think alike. I made the mistake again and went over to Bülent, who was very communicative. We had a very good relationship. I really liked him, and I said, "Yeah, can we talk for a moment?" And he was such a cool, communicative guy, so he said, "What's up? Can we talk again about the situation in the car the other day?" And he said, "Yeah, what's up?" I said I didn't mean anything bad by that towards him, you know how it was meant. He says, "Yeah, I understand you, but I also understand him and all." And I thought, okay, what's there to understand about him? And yeah, and then he said, "But talk to him again. You can talk to him, pull him aside, and just the two of you. Maybe it was a bit uncomfortable in front of the others." And so I do, okay, all right. And then I went in, like, "Can we talk for a moment?" And he was always like, "Yeah, yeah," just always like that. He sometimes had a really strange attitude. "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'm coming." We then went outside to the corner by Sahara on Riechstrasse, where there used to be a place called Happy Pizza or something similar. Hey man, I wanted to talk about the other day. I didn't mean anything bad by it or want to embarrass you. It was meant well. Perhaps that's how it seemed or felt to you. That's why I wasn't being mean. It was meant well. It's all cool. And I didn't come here to argue. And back then about Berlin and all that, he says, yeah, you don't need to keep bringing it up. I never really mentioned it much anyway. You don't need to keep repeating that as a justification. Pers says, let me tell you something. If you ever question my authority or me again in any way, I'll fuck you up. Did you understand me? Just so we're clear. I'm standing there in front of him and say, yeah, everything's fine. It's okay. Accept it as it is. And that's the end of the story. He says, don't get upset. And he left me standing there and went inside. At that moment, it became clear to me that this man was having a nice conversation. Yes, of course, very nice conversation. And he also threatened me then. You can't predict what he'll consider as questioning. If asked a question like that, just answer honestly. And then he feels that way and says, okay, you'll never get an honest answer again. First of all, that's not even what is wanted. Firstly, you can never predict which answer will satisfy him. Do you get my point? The situation is now unpredictable. It was clear to me that I had to leave. Staying was pointless. And then I also went through a very difficult phase. I was basically the jerk on duty at the club. You noticed that too. I told you that people were acting really weird toward me. Of course, people don't really notice what's going on. Of course, he tells people about it too. People talk among themselves about it. Or rather, let's put it this way. He also gave them a warning. And then it was clear for everyone. Yeah, it was like that for a couple of weeks. And then I decided for myself, I briefly thought it over, that somehow I could get out. But of course, I was aware that we had already had a few issues before, where I just talked to him about club matters and questioned things. And so his negativity towards me didn't just come out of nowhere. It was also a process, because he realized that this guy doesn't just keep his mouth shut and instead moves forward and pushes people aside, but hey, he's thinking too much about things here, that asshole, something like that. And that just kept going. And it became clear that I had built something for myself, but there were already comments like, who do you think you are? And you're never around. Those little digs showed they already had their eye on me. And because I did my business outside of the club, nobody really knew. And it was clear to me, okay, I just established myself financially. The little one is going to kindergarten. I brought my wife over. I just started to settle down a bit. But I wasn't ready yet to face any consequences, because my people also ask, why didn't you get out back then? In our chapter, you can't just leave abruptly, especially not from our specific chapter. Every chapter is different. So you can't just leave like that, because they can really mess you up. I mean, really mess you up, you know what I mean? Not just leave you with nothing, but it also depends on the situation, like what your status in the club is. If I had said I wanted out, they would have agreed, but I wouldn't have been able to walk safely through Berlin anymore. It would have been like running the gauntlet. Apart from the fact that I would have lost everything anyway, and they would have taken everything they could get their hands on, and even without the connection to the club, they would have done it anyway, because they always legitimize everything, like, yeah, everything belongs to us. So that's just how it was. And I've seen it in the past with other members who got kicked out somehow, that they just, I mean, I never saw them again. Even though they lived in Berlin, somewhere in Reinickendorf or in Schattenberg, I never saw them again. Also, these patterns with prospects, never again. And of course, for me, and the situation was clearly life-threatening, with even ex-husbands' houses being shot at. I decided to keep a low profile, stay quiet, and focus on my own affairs to avoid attracting further negative attention, which meant not getting involved in anything locally anymore.
Did you have anyone in the club you could really trust? Someone you also spent time with privately? No, I was definitely worried.
You can't trust anyone.
It gets passed on.
Used against me, well, of course, because people were also brothers with Cardinal, and everyone wants to be on good terms with Cardi.
But everyone has alliances like that in a club. There were...
But not here. He made sure of that. He always made sure that no groups formed. And that was also his concern with me, because I was able to gather people around me, and there were people who were simply positive towards me. That wasn't so dangerous for him, and I was also on the rise, and then the phone call revealed a lot in hindsight. That was back then, that was in the month when we had that conflict in the car. That's when it was recorded. It was because of that drive that the police started surveillance and phone monitoring. Because there was a tip that supposedly some kind of war weapons deals were being made between West End and Berlin City, which wasn't the case. They later stopped that as well. But that's why a telecommunications surveillance was started in the first place. And that was during this period, you know. And that's why, of course, I only found out about it afterwards, but my feeling was the same. And so, yes, everything was very messed up, but then I made the mistake. I wasn't prepared to deal with the consequences and take action. It's challenging, as you know. It's always
Branch based.
just based on that. That's precisely what I experienced. I arrived there without knowing anyone and dedicated all my efforts to it. Greeting people, I made some stupid mistakes, but that's how it was. Even for outside viewers, it's difficult. Some will always say, he's not out, he's in jail, especially when things got tough for him. Yeah, of course. Of course. So only when it hurts are you actually willing to take steps in your life to make a change. If you always somehow find a comfort zone in your life or a way out in the sense that you can avoid making difficult decisions. People always tend to take the easiest path or somehow to find a change is also
Painful. Change
is painful. And if you weren't ready for it back then, I was not ready to bear that pain and all the consequences either. That changed later, but it's not always as easy as it sounds, you know, from an outsider's perspective. Yeah, at first it's tough. Yeah, of course, only when it hurts do you need to change. I mean, I don't know, if everything is nice and everything is good and you somehow find a way to handle it, why would you make things harder for yourself? So from that perspective, it's just, of course, nobody does that. And of course, only when things really hit the fan, when you're really feeling like crap, only then do you think, hey man, I'm doing something totally wrong here, I need to change something. You know, and that's just how it is. I find this Bephobo thing really, yeah, I think it's very strange, this point of view. Or rather,
I'd like to throw in another question, namely when you hear that, okay, in your charter there was no honest conversation possible. Yeah, Bülent maybe a little, as you could hear now with Kadir, he was then
also not there anymore then. A few weeks later, he was out too. Why? Allegedly did business with someone he shouldn't have, had contact with someone he shouldn't have. Kadir wasn't involved, lied, cheated. And supposedly, that's why Beko was kicked out back then. He was accused of having contact with someone who was involved in real estate deals, and he shouldn't have had any contact with that person, let alone done business with them. According to the story, which may or may not be true, it was later revealed that Bülent was the one who made the deals and lied, blaming everything on Beko. And yes, that came out later.
Great brotherhood.
Totally. And then, yeah, Bülent was just thrown out for that number.
How?
As I mentioned, no voting meeting or anything. No communication.
He couldn't justify himself either. No, nothing at all. Couldn't present anything.
In context. He went no contact, and then I saw him again, but only after he got kicked out of the club. I never saw him again during his active time after those accusations. I get it too. My husband had 2 kids, a wife. He doesn't want to get beaten up on the street. And no matter how much of a man you are, you can't take on 10, 15
People.
You know how it is. They're all pack animals. None of them come alone. People usually come in groups armed with knives or similar weapons. They avoid one-on-one confrontations, especially with capable individuals, fearing getting beaten up or shot by a large group in public. I mean, that possibility was there too.
What I wanted to get at was, if you can't even handle that within the charter as president to say, okay, we need to have an open exchange here sometimes, or we need to discuss things. How was the interaction? Let me go back to Cardiopathan for a moment. How was the interaction which people in the club nationwide, let's leave the ideas aside for now, where did he feel, okay, here I can, or here people spoke normally? There was communication. How did he react to other presidents or established members? Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
First, always superficial and polite. Well, we've always had these superficial norms. He greeted everyone asking how they were doing. But as it is, of course, there are lobbies in the club and everyone has their own lobby. And within Germany, he wasn't with very many. But in the end, towards the end of my time and with the whole topic, it was West End that he got along with very well in Germany. And with Walter and the guys from West End, which has since been banned and a new charter founded, but that's the original West End charter, we got along very well with them, especially him. Outside of Germany, of course, there were some ideas and a few others, but not so many. Of course, it's always good. Brother comes along, okay, sure, we take care of him as a guest first, but really doing business together or actually working together, that's something else. He was Denmark and Nomads Copenhagen and West End were very close. There was some overlap with NRW, and once thematically, but it lacked real depth. Nothing where you would say, okay, because they were also on the same level.
But could another president have criticized him at a meeting or something and said, oh, what are you doing there in Berlin or something like that?
They can't do that as it's charter business. No one would have dared to do that. Naturally, he faced criticism. I attended in person. It was the final Germany meeting. That was in Leipzig, if I remember correctly. I may have once said Magdeburg, but I misremembered it. I believe it was Leipzig. I had to correct myself on that. In any case, it was a Germany meeting, and we were there, 3 members, including myself and a prospect. And then there was a Germany meeting, and it was a very significant meeting. By then, a few people had already left due to the expat murder incident. We're jumping around a bit now in the story. And it was just like that, which I found very funny. I've already done several Germany meetings, whether in Frankfurt, Kiel, or wherever. And it was just like that. Of course, we ran into Andre. They obviously had a relationship. Of course, they had to, but neither of them liked each other. But it was all very superficial and just small talk. And I found Andre very funny. He came up to us, said hello. I think Reich was there too, Reich Freitag, and I think Fenric was there as well, the press spokesman for the charter who does the media work, I believe. And then I said it was about voting. There was some kind of important vote coming up because of this. I've probably mentioned it before. I don't even know. Anyway, it was about a rule that was submitted for a vote. And it was about German members not being allowed to be part of foreign charters anymore if they live in Germany and their main place of living is in Germany. But with the prohibition order, which included the individual bans that were then carried out step by step by the authorities, they didn't all happen overnight.
That doesn't just mean Denmark, France, exactly, but
it's okay within Germany, but not outside of it anymore. Andre asked, how do you vote on that and what does your charter say about it? And I was standing next to him and he said, yeah, let's see. I already have my opinion on that. He said, yeah, that's true. You always decide everything for everyone on your own anyway. That's what Andre said?
yes.
That was telling. Some already knew what was going on with us, but they don't care about that. They're only looking at their own piece of the pie. I think some people don't know which Andre you mean. Andre Sommer, a veteran in the Hells Angels scene, former Union Berlin hooligan. By now, a veteran as the Hells Angels president of the Nomads. A very calm, communicative guy who just wants to be left in peace. There was already an assassination attempt on him where he was hit with 7 bullets in the upper body. Thankfully, he survived. An unbelievable story. Something like this has never happened before. There was a former president, his former president, whom he had thrown out along with the guys. There was a toll assignment, and luckily he survived it. The man has his community yard there in East Berlin and just wants to be left alone. Was there already someone with influence in the club? Yes, of course. Sure, they do their own things too. At the end of the day, they're angels. We don't want to downplay that. I'm not ranking anyone here. We're all equal. It's just that that's his attitude. Very calm. They do their things there. You're not entirely certain, but back then, Reich Freitag and others had control over the other side of Oranienburger Straße. The area known for street hustling and Kopperfelder is referred to as the Hustler Belt. The women sometimes did a bit of that. He did that with them and another guy in areas where solicitation is allowed. But otherwise, compared to others, especially for our charter, he was very calm. Old School has already seen a bit, has also had to take a lot in the Bandidos war. Centro had to take a lot. He told Kadir openly that he was the one, and Kadir responded saying he was funny. Then they moved on. So from that perspective, they already notice, of course, yeah, here and there, what's going on with charter and how things work there. But what do people not care about? Why would they care about that? That's their charter business. I'm looking at my own piece of the pie. We have to make sure our own wheel keeps turning. And that we keep this thing running here. I couldn't care less about them. If people are stupid enough to put up with that, then
It's their own choice.
It's their own choice. And yeah, that's just how it was.
Then there was a vote.
Then there was a vote, exactly. Let me quickly finish that story since we've jumped around chronologically. We can go back again later. Yes, then this proposal was put to the vote. It was read out. Yes, this person and that person, this person and that person. Who else wants to comment? Jürgen, a former club member back then. I know from a reliable source, the authorities. that he once wanted to say something about it. Then he stood up and said, yeah, with a big, long ponytail back then in West End, said, yeah, I wanted to comment on that. I can handle this here, guys. Pull yourselves together. Vote for us to have a turbo drill here. NRW was also a big topic back then because the patches and the customers were really being passed around. There was Ramin, who allegedly also killed Kai and who was also allegedly killed himself in Iran. I don't know if that's true. Ramin Jektaparas, who was on the run due to the crime, etc. He was also a hot topic during that wild time, particularly in North Rhine-Westphalia, where many people went wild. But they had a lot of chaos and nothing was club compliant. Really a perversion of club leadership. It was a topic, and then he said, no, pull yourselves together. We're finally here now. We have rules and world peace, and come on, guys, this just won't do. Kadir felt extremely triggered by that because he was running under Denmark Nomads, and that's just how it is. Champions League of the Charter and being friends and acquainted with them, and that had a very big prestige, and of course he doesn't want to have that taken away from him. He wouldn't have let that be taken away from him either. And he stood up and said, Jürgen, what do you even want? I'm running under Denmark Nomads. Should I give that up now? He said, yes, that's not how it works here. And he said, yes, vote for it. And if you voted against it and the man said you can still go through with it, then you come and try to take it from me. Take it away from me. Just try. Now I'm sitting down. Yeah, all right. And man, yeah, do whatever you want. He sat down, lowering his head. But that's not how you communicate. Yet that's how it was. But yeah,
There are a few rules after all. There's a vote, and if the majority of the group says, okay, that's how we do it, then that's how it is.
Ramin Jägerpaas, back then at the time, it was still Facebook. That's already 11 years ago. There was Facebook before. It was very popular, and he made a Facebook post, fuck the rules. Then he went to Turkey, spent a lot of time with Nejo, with the Nejo group, and personally was also with...
Yes, Nejo is now the Angels president.
He is now the president of the Normals Turkey chapter of the Angels. I don't know if he has started another charter by now, and former Red Light boss from Cologne. He was convicted of various crimes, deported and banned from traveling to Germany and possibly Europe. He definitely has a Europol alert in the Schengen area. I think so. And yes, he's in Turkey, founded a head-to-edit charter there, and they're doing their thing there.
Also a very powerful person, right? Within the, definitely has...
Yeah, in that area, he definitely has a say, and they're doing a lot there. Economically, they're very well positioned, meaning there's a lot of money involved. And yeah, he's also taken some photos with a rapper, someone like Kolja Goldstein and so on. They're putting themselves a bit more in the spotlight. And yeah, he was also arrested recently in Turkey. There was a big raid, but then he got out again. And yeah, that's the kind of person he is, yeah. I haven't met him personally, but I've heard stories about a conflict he had with someone from my chapter, and I wasn't there at the time. But I'm glad I don't have to meet him, and I don't want to. I don't need to. Then he was there and said, fuck the rules, which means screw the club rules. By that, he meant he's joining the club. There was also a vote about whether he would be out of bed standing. From everyone, really, all over Germany. And people voted on it because they were still like, how can that be? He says, fuck the rules. That's the kind of member we have here. That's the kind of people we have in the club who say to our own club, fuck the rules. That's their attitude, yeah. That can't be true. He must go, but we need to vote on all the restrictions. Get out of bed. And this can't go on like this. What kind of development is this? NRW wasn't represented at all, really. NRW stayed out of it because they were having a big fight among themselves. And then there was another topic. Then there was the lobbying battle. Matze from Leipzig, the president of head of the Interstate Leipzig, strongly advocated for the 1-2 charter from NRW. They came in like black sheep, so to speak. It was just put on display like that. Then there were conversations among each other. I saw that everyone was trying to get some political advantage. Everyone was trying to get something out of it. In the end, it was also about money, about influence, and about showing strength and having political power in the club. There were discussions, and well, it was all... You could tell things were already going downhill, and I think if a 30-year member saw that, they'd think, where have we ended up? I think it's good if things change from within, if the structure improves itself somehow.
I was just about to say there must still be people sitting there asking, what's going on here?
Of course not, and that hasn't improved.
That's a question of rules. Everyone has to say, like, those are the world rules. Like that's how it is with us when...
You stick to them, you have to.
That's also
the side is bigger than the club, but now it's the other way around, and you know how people are, and yeah, but it didn't happen because the vote was interrupted, and now I can close it. We'll do it under small tables regionally, and it was a huge mess. We faced other problems as crime was rampant. People, including Kadir and others involved, were being arrested and expected to be next. That's why Kadir was very, well, he seemed very relaxed, but I think he was really stressed out. And of course, obviously, his charter was falling apart. He totally crashed the charter against the wall. And the guys too, of course. Everyone always gets involved. There's a hand... Don't do it like that. And the others who do it too. So it's never just one person involved. So in politics, you can't blame everything on Hitler. At the end of the day, Hitler just gave orders and the people under him carried them out. So it wasn't just Hitler alone. That's why you must hold all those who complied with that nonsense accountable. It was a system. And a system doesn't work with just one person. And yeah, that's just how it was. And that was the situation just as it was in the charter, according to the rules. That's how it was. People who would have never come 2 years ago were brought into our charter. From the perspective back then, quality was always very important to me. I'll emphasize this a few times, but not in a negative way. It's crucial that things don't get confused and false impressions aren't created, especially when discussing topics like this. That's why I sometimes highlight this point. From the perspective back then, it was just like this. They weren't qualified for the club. In the past, they lacked the desired mindset and the physical or mental requirements. Generally, they were unsuitable, even if they might have been friends at one point. One member wanted his errand boy cousin to join, suggesting he should become a prospect or a hang-around. I was sitting there in the meeting thinking, what is this? He just presented it like that, you know? It was never even voted on. It wouldn't have been voted on that way because he decided it, but it would have never progressed further. But I knew it didn't make any sense. But by then, that's how far it had come. So really, everything was going downhill then, and that also included the expulsions of the personalities who were kicked out. I've mentioned one or two now, but there were a few more involved, and it was just clear if these people can already be kicked out, then that's
a sign
for that. Then here the thing is bleeding out, and in the end, that's it. I'll say it.
We had already made the leap. This meeting was after the expert betting shop murder, but
it just fit thematically, so I wanted to...
That if people can already follow, and if not, then 2 marks penalty. Exactly. For you, it was like noticing that something wasn't right anymore, but you didn't know how. How does it go on after you realize I'm kind of a persona non grata here, I'm an outcast here, or they've put me on the spot for a mistake and they're just waiting for something? How did it go on then?
Everyday life continued. I kept a low profile, followed the rules, and was always present, ensuring I didn't make myself vulnerable. And that worked out. And that's how life goes. That's definitely how it was for us. In my experience, it was inevitable that someone would eventually become the troublemaker in the charter I belonged to. And then you are then out of the spotlight again. That worked out too well. There was another member, he was already sleeping back then, was then singled out because he did something, and then he was the person everyone focused on and who really got targeted. And that's when I was out again. And then things settled down a bit again. And I think we also had a few moments. Kadir also, I think, took some time to reflect a bit later, and then also kind of... I think he realized that he shouldn't, that he... Yeah, how should I put it? Of course, I'm kind of suggesting something to myself here, but I'm just talking about how I felt, how he acted towards me, that he kind of realized people were turning against him. In the last year and a half, a lot of people got fired. Things are changing, of course. There was a lot of pressure and all that. And the charter wasn't running the way it used to anymore. The quality, the manpower just wasn't there anymore. Sure, it was my war charter, but still a lot of people left. And then he tried to be nice to me again. And for me, that was an indication, okay, he's trying again to emotionally win me over to his side. This people catcher attitude is clumsy and simple. Simple, and for me, I was already immune to it, and it didn't work on me anymore. But did you play along? Of course I play along, of course. I decided to focus on my job, do it by the book, and find peace. But I noticed everything more intensely and from a totally new perspective. Us. Yeah, and that's how it was, that's how it went. And then there were a few more things, but nothing really worth mentioning happened after that. We had additional situations, including another charter in North Rhine-Westphalia that we disagreed with. Then we had the conflict with Aygun Muçuk. What conflict? He publicly attacked Kadir and our charter at meetings. And he said we were rotten eggs in the basket, and how could that be? And we got support from the Americans in California. They're the originals over there. I mean, they founded the whole thing. They could have kept it over there with them if they wanted, but that's how it is. And they thought we were so cool, especially those from California, San Bernardino, that they dedicated a charter, their own patch, just for us. And we were called the Hardliner because we were such a fighter crew. And you only got that if you stood up for a club during a war. Got into a fight or something, but didn't kill anyone.
You stood up for yourself in some way?
Whatever action, whatever it was. Are they then sent from California?
Yeah, they are.
They were here 2 or 3 times and said, we would sponsor this for you. Only you have this, you're allowed to distribute it. They've honored another charter along with Yena Gutman and Cello, who also received the honor. Kadir previously returned it for an unknown reason. Cello is the president of Duisburg.
Also very much in the media as a duo.
Yes, very much in the media. They like to stage themselves. I don't have a clear overview of the charter, but I have great communication with the authorities there. It's very wild, but the LKA guys are awesome and on it, wishing them lots of success. And that's how it was. Only we were allowed to hand them out, or rather Kadir was allowed to distribute them, and he got really upset about it. That would be fake, we would have made it up, and what Americans, and they're all about confrontation. Of course, that's an insult to Kadir's honor. He gets upset when I tell him to relax about the woman, and then someone in the club, not in his charter, makes it public, which is embarrassing for him.
Guys, I can't really imagine it just as an outsider. I only observed it, and we only know rumors and stories. It's all third or fourth hand information, but it's also hard to imagine Aygun Muçuk and Padir sitting at a table together as buddies.
You'd be surprised that we had a very good relationship for the first year and a half. We attended parties at the Frankfurt guy's place after he invited us. He had been to one of our club parties and was straightforward with us, like many others. Like many others who sympathized and wanted to be involved with the strong power. You know how opportunistic all of that is. He got along very well with us. But that changed when he started doing his own thing and becoming independent in the club, and started asking, okay, where is my recognition? Where is my status? He was also a very vain guy, and you know how it is also a show-off. He wanted to be in the spotlight and felt overlooked because suddenly Kadir was the big migrant figure and he wasn't getting any attention in the media or whatever. And then he started causing trouble there. Back then, that was the starting point that later led to him being at war with his own club, with certain local chapters. And then there was the shooting in 2016 or 2015 where Frankfurt members and the Frankfurt chapter shot at each other at a
Japanese guy or something. At a Japanese place in
Enstadt, at some fancy place there. And yeah, of course, that's a level of quality that's probably never been seen before. So it's never happened before in Germany that the brother charter, meaning a charter from a charter within the same structure, shoots at each other. So that's just crazy. There was a time in Canada or America where something like that happened with another Hells Angels chapter. I think it was Holland.
Me too.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know about that. But I know that for those who know the story, Apache, they also killed other Hells Angels because they didn't trust him and thought he was a traitor or whatever. I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but you can look that up. He also wrote a book, but that just never existed in Germany before. That was a completely different quality of debate within the structure. There were always disagreements, but they were resolved through regular discussions and compromises at a round table. This unprecedented event has left someone to bear the consequences. And that's really intense, of course, and the starting shot had already been fired in my time. So he went straight into confrontation. He also got into it with Walter, got into it with them. He really wanted to become independent, confronted everyone who was somehow relevant in the club, and then in Turkey he also fell out with people there, but somehow managed to set up his own charter in Gießen. Unfortunately for him, it ended badly. I'm just sorry for the kids. The man had kids and wives. He failed with that and was then shot on his own club territory with 16 bullets, overkill, a really, really nasty situation.
Literally executed? Literally, yes.
Was executed, yes. And yes, that's how it ended up, yes. How was that received?
With you guys, such an insult? They were here. Lazy Egg, the Berliners there. Yeah, that was...
really intense, of course. We're panicking as he just lost it. He's attempting to manipulate me. He went to Turkey to stay safe with Nejo, as he was already a known figure. Then he was present. That's how everything went down there. We agreed on an inconsistent topic. The guy asked if he was messing with me. Forget that guy. And I'm not going to repeat those expressions now. and will avoid using such expressions to keep the content appropriate. So the language used in this genre or video is well known. In any case, he insulted him in the worst way. He said, hey, I'm going to mess him up and whatever else, and I'm going after him and he'll see. But it didn't come to that, because then we still... In late 2013 and 2014, our chapter experienced numerous acts of violence and attacks. And then it just fizzles out. But it would have been if...
I think
Many people, including myself and others, were arrested at construction sites. But I think if that hadn't happened, it would have only been a matter of time before things exploded there, and people would have gone down and said, that's it, we're done from our side. But there were shootings among themselves in Frankfurt and other places as they tore themselves apart. And
yeah, you don't know who, but doesn't anyone from Germany step in and say, okay guys, let's all sit down at a table? Yes, definitely
after the shooting, there was likely a significant meeting where they said, yeah, are you out of your minds? We're finished here. And then there definitely must have been a truce, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to run his charter in peace. You can't just start a final seat charter with the patch and everything if no charter accepts you. It doesn't work. That's why I think he probably put on some pressure and did a bit of lobbying here and there. And then there definitely must have been a truce, and he found a compromise that everyone could live with, even if they didn't like each other, and everyone just lived their own life and waited for the other to make a mistake and then tried to take them out. That's how it works. But of course that was different, that was intense. And the starting point for all of this was back then also this whole... Rahman went off the rails with fuck the rules, started his own business with his Mönchengladbach charter, and then allegedly, you have to say, his own club brother, executed and dismembered him based on alleged information that he was an informant. Extremely sick, far beyond good and evil, but this, even with this story, shortly after that, I think Fizzy Few got tattooed, right? Fizzy Few got tattooed, and Fizzy Few also showed it off to the outside. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He's not just some random guy at the bar or anything. No, that's murder. Someone who wears something like that has killed for Klopp, or was involved in a killing and played his part in this murder, in this contract killing, in this murder. And that's nothing else. So for the viewers as well, if some people get involved, that's for something. Don't let anyone tell you nonsense about it.
Club life is coming to an end. Yes?
Not yet. Now, in retrospect, of course, because we know the story, but for me back then, no, it just went on. You just went along, as I said.
That means the construction sites outside, but we still have construction sites in Berlin, so you as charter...
Exactly, internal conflict. Exactly, yes. And then we went to Denmark a few more times. They were with us, the nomads. That was club life, nothing big happened anymore. And then there were the two murders, the attacks. Or rather, the first murder, then the second murder with Expact, where I was also imprisoned a lot. There were a few attacks. And that led to people unfortunately getting hurt, some people being left behind, people dying, and family members losing loved ones. And the whole charter just completely, I mean, it completely imploded from the inside. Well, it's just that that's, I mean...
What is... So, if we get into the topic now, what would you say is the real starting point where you say, okay, this is where it really begins, this is where the motorcycle is really heading straight for the abyss?
Yes, 2012 with the expulsions, 2012.
Did the charter change then? Yes.
Because key personalities were removed both rightfully and wrongfully. I don't know the real reasons, whether it's true or not. You know how things went down there. I noticed it myself. But it was clear looking back now. Back then it wasn't clear yet that things were coming to an end. The loss of control and the departures due to the ban significantly impacted the situation. We recovered, rebuilt, and acquired 4 new charters, but our manpower remained unchanged. It's merely paperwork. But you could already tell the quality of the staff was going down as much as possible. He became more and more of an autocrat, more authoritarian, more extreme, and more incorrigible. And then this whole liaison with that affair, that also changed him a lot. He started drinking very often, really getting drunk, even at parties. We were at a party in Rostock with the guys from Hamburg, Carl, Southport, Dari, and the others who had a good time in Ireland. We were all together. He got really drunk there. I drank too, which was unusual for me. drinking a lot of alcohol regularly, those were all total changes. And that wouldn't have happened a year or a year and a half ago. That changed him, and that automatically changes the leadership of the club as well, because the head of the chapter always sets the tone. Yeah, and then there was a twist with NRW. A member died there. He had multiple organ failure due to massive steroid use. So we went there because I said, I don't want any part of that. We can't do that. And for them, it was an insult, like, why aren't you coming? You used to be close.
Which actually means that the charter should send 1 or 2 people here, but with us.
We're not coming, we don't have time, we have things to do, we have problems of our own. So no, for them that was an insult. I understand that from their perspective, and that's where the twist was. The relationship turned sour. We visited a few times. We were good before. You could say NRW. NRW is very general, but I'm talking about Duisburg and Mönchengladbach and Oberhausen, all those places, Cologne and all that. Cologne stands apart, but smaller cities like Duisburg and Oberhausen are...
That's all mere rubber.
Yes, Gelsenkirchen and other similar locations. It was like this. We went down there 2 or 3 times, and it was the Wild West. Not in the sense that things happened there, well, probably that too, but when it came to all those club rules like patching, being a prospect or a hang-around, there were prospects who already had AFA tattoos. Only a long-time member is allowed to have AFA. Angels forever, forever angels.
Wasn't there once a rule about something happening every 5 years? We
didn't stick to that over the years either. I had it too, but at least I was a member. And with them, it was like this. Even hang-arounds and prospects already had it tattooed. Even the poor guy, Kai, who was slaughtered there, God rest his soul, he also had ape and so on tattooed on his arm. So those were things that made us say, well, what's going on here? It was really surprising for us. And that's exactly what you said earlier in the first or second episode about the information we always heard about down there in Berlin and so on. Yeah, they hand over the vest and my motorcycle. That applies to NRW. No one was on motorcycles, maybe a few people, but compared to the number of people, maybe 1%, if that. The patches were just passed around, schedules weren't kept, emails weren't sent out, no one knew who was really a member and who belonged where and whatever, and cousin, you just had tattoos, and it was crazy what was going on there. It was like, we got there and thought, what is this? It was the major turnoff, so we stopped going there. Then there was the funeral situation. And after that, things weren't good anymore. A lot of Midland stuff like that. Midland was an original charter. It gained popularity due to Timo, who
shot the stick.
And then everyone was out. The Pope at the time, named Mühl, was also a long-serving leader. He was eventually removed from his position as well. It completely turned around 180 degrees, and what happened there was truly unmanageable. I don't know what's going on there today. According to reports and investigative authorities, they are now shooting at each other in broad daylight with numerous people present. Investigative authorities, it's really crazy what's going on there. That's why, yes, I also have my own information regarding the police, but I can't go into too much detail now. What I can say is that it's really, well, it's beyond good and evil. The way you and I know it from our time has completely changed. It's a completely different kind of club, or whatever you want to call it, than what we had or what you had.
We'll probably talk about that in the next part. When it starts with the soda club, yes, exactly. That's kind of the starting signal for...
Implosion from within, like an atomic bomb. You dropped charter, and it all blows up in your face.
Kassra, thank you so much. We'll get to that in a moment, what probably changed your life drastically, and of course for many others as well, including the deceased, their families, and so on, what happened there. That was almost a teaser, but you'll tell us about it in a moment. Thank you very much for your input. Thank you anyway, guys, thank you. Check out the book by Alcázar de Percer, linked below. Feel free to give it a thumbs up or down and leave a comment. Thanks to the channel members. I'm even coughing at the end now, and yes, thank you for being here. And as always, I remain with a ahoy from the coast.